Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Guildmaster Gaming. This time around, I am talking with screenplay writer, director, editor, mostly from what you're telling me, of a lot of things. But today we're here to talk about a screenplay he's written, The Shadow Over Christmas. And like I always tell you, if you like these things, please like them and share them out. We like to support the independent market as much as possible, and this is one way that we like to do it. So, Mark, welcome, and please tell us about yourself and about your screenplay.
Hey, Dan. Thanks. My short screenplay is called The Shadow Over Christmas, which is at Film Quest this year. And it's a Christmas horror story about a daughter who's grieving the suicide of her mother the year before at Christmas. And it was a Christmas that, the daughter and mother, like it was the one holiday every year that they really enjoyed, and they would spend time together decorating the house, baking, that kind of stuff. So she's come home from university and she's devastated that she's coming back home to the an empty house. But then she also finds out that her father is now with a new woman who's moved in, and she's not happy about it. And early in the script, she finds a gift that was left to her from her mother from the year before that never got opened because of what happened, the tragedy that happened. And this little gift sets in motion, a dark entity into the house and revenge. And that's all I'll say.
Yep. Don't want to give too much of a
Which
whoop.
is, this right. And, in the title, it's a play on, obviously, I'm a big fan of like Shadow over Innsmouth and H.P. Lovecraft, and it's not an H.P. Lovecraft type story. It's not Lovecraftian at all.
No.
But the idea of this death kind of hangs over Christmas for them, right? So it's this dark shadow that hangs over this house. So
Okay.
yeah, that's my. I mean, it was something that I did want to make at one point, but you've read it, Dan, and it's pretty big for a short film. There's a lot of special effects, a lot of visual effects. It's quite out of my price range to make right now.
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree with that. The visual effects to make this work would probably be a little bit up there. But it's a
Right.
great little story. But also
Thank
tell us a little bit about yourself. What is it that you do in terms of your writing and filmmaking?
Right. I live up here in Toronto, Canada, and I've been making films, God, for a long time. I actually have not made a film since 2014, which is the last Halloween here that also played at Film Quest. So it's been a long time. So I've been busy, just moving up the ladder in my career in the production sector here in Toronto as an editor. So I recently edited Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. I did one episode of that, Pickman's Model. And, I'm doing a bunch of other things here in Canada. And, but at the same time, I also write, and I have directed about 10 short films. And I continually continue writing as, features. I'm hoping to get something made one day. That's always the goal. And in between the feature writing, I write short screenplays because they're fun and they're like a little bit of a palate cleanser, between the features. So, and, you always write them in the hopes that, maybe you can make them because they're always meant to be like a stepping stone to that next project, if you can get them made.
Yeah.
I try.
Yeah, I understand what you mean about palate cleanser. That's how, as writers, always talk about writing short stories.
Mhm.
Great way to kind of get that little idea out and kind of just move on and then get back to your main project you want to work on. So I understand that completely. So you were saying this, you have the play on words, so it's not Lovecraftian. What
No.
was your inspiration for The Shadows Over Christmas?
Funny enough, it came from a friend of mine. He had asked me to write a short script for him because we had this grant here in Toronto through our union. We're with the Directors Guild of Canada, and they were funding. They were going to give away three grants for three short films, and he wanted to do something, and he sent me a kernel of an idea. Actually, no, it was a little bit more fleshed out than that, and it just wasn't for me. It wasn't something that really wanted to do. But there were two things in it that kind of sparked this idea, and I kind of just took those and I wrote a script and I sent it to him, and he was interested and liked it, but ultimately decided it was way too expensive to submit. So I just kind of like went with it and started submitting it to contests and stuff. And so yeah, it started. His had an idea of he came to me with an idea of a gift that you open and it unleashes this realm, right? And that's where I took off from that. And it was set at Christmas as well.
The,
So that
the
kind of
mag-
sparked the idea.
yeah, the magical item type
That's
thing.
right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, I just all of a sudden popped in mind the White Gold Wielder, an old book from the late 70s, 80s. Which exactly that was. He put on a ring, his wedding ring was white gold and it made it magical for him and take him to another
Nice.
realm of being. Uh,
Right.
so kind of that whole premise. Now, this one thing you said, it just kind of also sparked was this really shows the idea of collaboration
Hmm.
and sharing ideas that you're working on one idea and you got this whole different one and everything. Do you normally like to collaborate on your work, or are you one of those people that usually likes to kind of focus in on your own ideas and just drive after them?
No, I mean, normally I do like last Halloween here is based on a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, and a co-writer of a lot of material that I work on. But he had an 8-page comic book that he came to me with that, was never published or anything. And it was this story. And that kind of sparked, oh, this could make a really great short film. And we went from there and we wrote it together. And we've written a few. I mean, I did another short film. I think the only thing that I've really written by myself as a short film was probably my short remote that I sent to you. But everything outside of that, it's been between myself and my co-writer, Mark Thibodeau. And Richard, who I mentioned to you previously before we got on, who did Hang Up, which was at Film Quest as well. Um, he's a very close friend of mine, and we just are always texting or on the phone, bouncing story ideas off each other. So whether or not we're writing, like we're not writing together, but we're always bouncing stuff off each other. Like I need that sounding board. So he's like him and my co-writer Mark Thibodeau. Like I'll always go to those two guys and like, I have this idea. What do you think? And then we back and forth. So I do like the idea of collaboration. Writing together is not that easy, especially if you're not in the same room together and we all have different schedules, and because it can get frustrating. Like, the one guy has more time than me, so he's writing more. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of falling behind and I feel bad. And it's like, so I generally write by myself, or I'll do one draft by myself and then send it to my co-writer Mark, and then he'll take a pass at the draft, or he'll start a draft and then send it back to me, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, collaboration is super important.
Yeah, I was kind of mentioning that because I work with a writing organization, the League of Utah
Right.
Writers, and a president of one of the chapters. And it's one of the things we try to get people to think about is that it's all right to talk about what you're doing. You don't have to do it in
Mhm.
your own little world.
Well,
So
I find the thing with these guys, like when you do talk, you're right, because when you do talk about it, you kind of like work out. You can do all the talking in the conversation about your project, and then you'll just talk yourself into the solution, right? And they're like kind of nodding and agreeing, right? So, or they'll come up with an idea that will help you solve that problem that you have, right?
yep.
So I completely agree. I used to be part of like a writing group many years ago that a friend of mine used to have at his house, and everybody would come in with pages and we take turns reading our pages. And like that stuff was amazing because you got instant feedback, and it's like, you're only reading like 10 pages. So you're not going back to fix 30 pages, you're going back to fix 10 pages, which is a little easier. So I completely agree with you. I think that's super important. There should be more of that.
That's exactly what the Inklings did, or the writing group that Tolkien
Mhm.
and Lewis were involved in. So it's
Oh, I didn't even know they were in a writing group.
oh
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, they
Okay.
were in a writing group and they were together for like I think, a number of years, well over
Okay.
a decade or that. And that was their whole thing is they'd get up and they'd read and then other people would critique it after they read their section.
And
Uh,
what was it called? The Inklings?
yeah, the Inklings. I think,
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if I still have it here. Oh, yeah. This is a book about them. It's called Bandersnatch, and it's
Okay.
about the Inklings, C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and the creative collaboration of the Inklings.
Just wrote
He's
that
hurriedly
down.
taking notes.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's a good find.
This is a little bit more of a scholarly approach to what they did from
Right.
a person out of, can't remember, it's one of the Kent State University
Okay.
Press. So, so I very much along those lines. So it sounds like you've been into writing and storytelling for quite a while. Uh,
Since I was a kid, I mean, I don't know, my writing partner and I go back like we met when we were 9 and we were always kind of writing, sharing short stories with each other and always dreaming of making movies. And I was the only, I got into the business, eventually and we together made a bunch of little short films and trying to make features. But yeah, no, it's something that I've always been interested in. I'm a big reader. I like to write. I don't, get as much time as I used to, to do it because, I try, I normally write between working gigs because, editing is all consuming sometimes. And, you
yeah,
know,
gotta first make sure to pay the bills.
exactly.
It's one of those jokes we have, talking with creative people. It's actually one of those areas it's all right to say, what do you do for your day job? And
Right. Exactly.
so, being this longtime storyteller, what was your inspiration that kind of got you into wanting to be a writer and to telling your stories?
Again, it was a movie. It was John Carpenter's The Thing. All right. That's what really like got me going. And that made me want to like figure out how movies were made, like who the hell made this movie, this fantastic film. And and from there that was it. I just started devouring every film magazine I could get my hands on in the small town that I grew up in and, saw every movie I possibly could, then moved to Toronto and because I don't know anybody I didn't know anybody in the industry. My family is not connected, and I went to film school and I worked for free on a bunch of shows and worked my way up the ladder. So yeah, no, it was John Carpenter's The Thing that really set me going. I mean, I was a reader back then, but not as I was reading Stephen King. I grew up in New Brunswick, which is like on the other side of like Maine, where King is from, right? So it was a lot of Stephen King and movies for me as a kid. That's what made me want to be a storyteller.
Okay, so you mentioned The Thing was a big inspiration to get you. What were some of the other movies that got you into it that you really kind of found inspiring that influenced what you like to do?
Um, well, I could say a lot of this, I was a John Carpenter fan and I still am, but like that was my jam growing up. That was my era. So it was a lot of that, The Exorcist was a big influence on me. That movie terrified. I saw it too young and it terrified me, but fascinated me at the same time. And it was always horror more than anything. Like I like sci-fi, I like fantasy. I love all cinema, drama, suspense, whatever, but horror and thriller are always like my main go-tos. So, it always starts and stops with film.
Okay. So what's your draw towards horror? What is it that you think that really draws you to it?
Well, I mean, there's a every emotional range is just there with horror. There's grief, there's sadness, there's fear, um, dread, suspense. I mean, just I don't really know why, to be honest. Like I can't pinpoint why like that draws me to it, but it just does. Like my wife is not a horror film fan. But I'll trick her. She likes vampires, so I'll trick her every now and then to watching something because it's got a vampire in it or something, right? So
I I can totally relate to that, and my wife might hear me saying this because she's in the
yeah,
next room over, so I might get in trouble for this. But my wife is the same way. She doesn't really care for science fiction and fantasy, and
right,
horror is out. And the
right.
first work I ever got published was a horror story, and
Oh,
it's kind of one
nice.
of my mainstays is writing horror and working with horror. So
Right.
Yeah, we kind of diverge a little bit on it. So I understand
Yeah.
the that aspect of it. So, we got that's your inspiration of where you came from for being a
Mhm.
filmmaker, going into horror. Now you got this screenplay and it sounds like you would like to make it, but yeah, it's something that's probably a little bit more expensive. Do you have some other projects that you're currently working on that you can share and talk to us about? Besides, I mean, having connections with Del Toro and his work, it's
Well, I mean, the connection there is very fleeting. I was an editor in a room and he was remotely working with us. So I met him once, but no, I do have other short film projects that I've written. One's called Psycho Vision, which is also out to a few contests right now. And that's about it's about a psychic who tracks serial killers and has been doing it for years, but over the course of his following these people and trying to track them down and seeing their visions has sort of grown a taste for the violence and is now
Mm,
thinking that maybe it's time, right? So there's that, and that one's probably a little bit more manageable. It's there's no major special effects other than like, some blood and stuff like that, but like there's no writhing tentacles of Christmas decorations going up and down walls and things like that. And then I have another one which is more of a dark comedy called Chad Picks His Nose and Ruins Everything, uh, which I came close to trying to get to make and just it fell apart. So that didn't happen. And then I have another one called Page Turner, which is both a short, which was at Film Quest back in, God, I don't know if it was 2017 or 2019, somewhere in there, which I've also turned into a feature script, which is what I'm currently revising now because we're hoping to try to get that made. I don't really want to give away what that's about.
no, that's totally understandable.
Yeah,
It's just some titles that people can watch out for and
right.
kind of see what you're doing, what's coming up. Now, if that's what you got kind of working, but if you had a chance, Mark, to
Mhm.
have your dream project to work on, what project would you like to do? I mean, and that could be one of your own or working for something else. What is it that would be your dream project?
Oh man, that's I don't want to do a remake of anything, you know, because you see a lot of these guys come up and then they're handed a remake of something, and that's not something I'm really interested in. There is. I'm going to go back to one of my own,
Mhm.
and for about 10 years, I tried to make a feature of my short film Remote, and I can't even tell you how many drafts of that screenplay that I wrote, and I would say maybe like 30 different drafts, and probably like 15 of them were completely different from the last, right? So, if I ever had the opportunity to do that, I would jump at it. I just, but it's one of those projects that feels like it's not meant to be because you get it so far and people are really interested, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but could you do this with it? You know? And then it just makes you throw your hands up and walk away. So,
My cat just said hello.
oh, hello, cat. Oh, nice cat.
Yeah, one of the two, we have a pair of brothers and they look almost exactly the same. I have to leave the door slightly open, otherwise they'll sit out there and just whine and scratch. But
Right.
usually they don't come in, but he did. So, um, so that would be your dream project, working doing your own film remote. I mean,
Mm.
that's always, I think, a lot of fun being able to work on your own things and that. So that's great. Now, do you have anything else that's out on the festival circuit that people might be able to see where your work's at, or
No, I haven't made a film since 2014. So like I've like Last Halloween and Remote or well, Last Halloween's on Alter, the
okay,
YouTube channel, and it's also with Remote. It's part of Bloody Disgusting TV's Bloody Bites, which you
okay.
can see on Screenbox and on their YouTube channels as well. So all my stuff's easy to find. I'm not a gatekeeper. I don't hide it under, a paywall or anything. I want people to see my work, right? So it's out there.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel. My name, Marc Roussel.
Okay. So if they checked out those places, they could probably track down and see
Oh,
Last Halloween and the other works you're doing.
absolutely. If they go to Alter and type in like Alter Last Halloween, they'll find it there. And like I said, if they have Screenbox or
Mhm.
Bloody Disgusting TV, I can't remember what it's called, but you can find it there as part of their Bloody Bites um, series.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to be able to kind of see how things are going out. And you got
Mhm.
the projects ahead. We talked about that. So, it's always kind of a little bit tougher to talk about screenplays because it's,
Sure. No one
because
can read it. Yeah.
it's like go out and buy the screenplay. Well, no, but it's it does sound like you've got a lot under where you've gone into a lot of festivals over the years,
Mhm.
and some of them that you've mentioned, they're kind of tougher ones to get into.
Yeah.
You've got some good credits there about what you're writing and what you're creating.
Yeah.
So my hat's off to you for that. Uh, so just out of curiosity, are you going to be able to make it to Film Quest this year?
No, sadly. I started another editing show on the 21st, so that'll keep me busy until early December. And with these schedules, you just can't duck away for
No, I understand. I understand. So, but we always like to check, that way if people are going to be there, they can look for you.
Hey, listen, my goal is to one day hopefully get out there with a feature film. That's what I really would love to do. So,
Mhm.
because Jonathan and those guys, they've been really great to me. The first thing I ever sent to them was last Halloween, and then after that, all I had were screenplays, and then they opened up their screenplay categories, and I was sending them features and short films, and luckily enough, I always made it onto the list. So they're great guys, and I hope to meet them one day.
Yeah. I've had
Uh,
an opportunity of working on the Fringe with them because I've never actually been part of the Film Quest directorial stuff.
Right,
But kind of talking about being a writer, I started out writing for a local magazine called Utah Geek Magazine, and I was doing tabletop game reviews. That's
right.
and one day one of the owners called me up. They go, "Hey, we know you do this, you do game reviews, but we got this chance going to this new film festival.
Mm.
Do you do movie reviews?" I was like, "I do now." And I guess you could say the rest is history because Jonathan and Jonna, ever since then, just invited me back saying, we understand the magazine closed. We don't care. Come on back and we'll
Oh,
keep doing
nice.
these
That's great
reviews.
of
And
them.
now we're doing
Yeah.
interviews. So I really enjoy working with the independent people like yourself and giving you the credit. So, with it sounds like you've been at this for some time. So I'm going to kind of finish up
Hmm.
before opening it up for you to give a final call out in any way you'd like.
Right.
But kind of my final question for you would be then, if you had someone come to you and say, Mark, I want to become a filmmaker, what advice would you give them?
Honestly, just go out and do it. Because I went to film school, right? This is back in the like late 80s, early 90s when we didn't have cell phones with, these great cameras in them and, big hard drives in them. So it cost a lot of money to make a film, like if you were shooting 16, you had to buy the film stock, whatever. Now just go out and do it because you can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk about making a movie. But if you don't go out there and do it, it's never going to get made. And, that was my motto for a long time. And when I said I was going to do it, I did it. Like, within like a 5 year, 6 year period, we made like 5 or 6 films, right? We were always doing something, but it's costly, like I don't care what anybody says, you still got to put out the money to make it, right? And if it's a short film, you're not going to make a lot, I hate saying this, but you're not going to make much money off of it, right? So the goal is they're always meant to be calling cards. You're trying to get that money for the feature, but you need to show that you can do something. So if you want to go out and make a short film, go out and make a short film.
Okay. So as we kind of wrap it up, we've been going for almost a half an hour now.
Okay.
But to kind of wrap it up, I'm going to give you a moment. Any final call outs or anything you'd like to say to anybody?
Um, Yeah, sure. Check out my buddy Richard Powell's films. Familiar, Hang Up, Worm, Air. You can find some of them online. You can buy them, some of them on iTunes. He's a great filmmaker, a great pal, and yeah,
And
happy
I'll kind
Halloween.
and I will endorse that because I've had a chance of seeing a couple of those films that you mentioned, because they have screened at
Yeah,
festivals that I've been to. So yeah, some good
yeah.
stuff there. So we'll just kind of end
Thank
here
you.
and say, thank you for joining us, and everybody, thank you for, getting out and supporting the independent filmmakers at any level that they're at. Like we say, support the independent artists. That's where really the trends are showing and where you can see some really amazing things, read some really great stuff, you know. And if you like what we're doing here, please like this, share it. If you'd subscribe, that's great. And again, Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Okay.